Hey everyone, it's Daniel here. Before we get into today's episode, just want to give you a quick reminder that I will be hosting a giveaway for the podcast soon. The podcast is turning one in June. It's turning one in June on June the 13th, and I'm excited to do a giveaway to celebrate the 1 year anniversary of the show. I did a short episode about the giveaway, detailing everything, and there'll also be some details in the description of today's episode about the giveaway. But just to quickly give you some details about how you can enter and what it's for, I'm partnering with the Isaiah 117 House for this giveaway. If you are not aware, the Isaiah 117 House is a Tennessee-based nonprofit organization that provides physical and emotional support in a safe and loving home for children awaiting foster care placement. They have locations all across the Southeast United States, and they're a really, really great organization, and so I'm excited to have this opportunity to partner with them. If you want to enter the giveaway, all you have to do is make a donation to the Isaiah 117 House through Venmo. You can make your donation in $5 increments. So if you make a $5 donation, that will be one submission into the giveaway. A $10 donation will be two submissions, and so on and so forth. The winner of the giveaway will be announced on Monday, June the 12th, and they will receive the first ever Radio Face t-shirt, the first ever Radio Face sticker, and a $50 Visa gift card, all given to you, shipped straight to you. So again, you can make as many entries as you like. All proceeds will go directly to the Isaiah 117 House. None of this will be coming back to me, so I really hope you take this opportunity to support this great organization, all the great work they're doing. If you don't have, to make a donation, you'll need to do it through Venmo. So if you don't have a Venmo account, you can download it for free on your phone, hook up your bank account, and then make a donation to the Chambliss Center, which handles all the finances for the Isaiah 117 House. The handle for the Chambliss Center on Venmo is at ChamblissCenter. That's where you can find them on Venmo. And whenever you make this donation to enter the giveaway, just make a note with your donation, just distinguishing that this is for the giveaway. So you can make a note saying Radio Face Podcast. You can make a note that just says podcast. You can make a note that says giveaway, anything along those lines that denotes that you are making this donation to the Isaiah 117 House for this giveaway. As I said, the winner will be announced on Monday, June the 12th, so you've got a lot of time to enter this giveaway, and I'm really excited to partner with the Isaiah 117 House and raise some money for a great cause. Thank you all for all the support you've given me over this year so far, and I'm excited for year number 2. Thank you for the Isaiah 117 House for partnering with me, and I'm really excited to take this opportunity to help out a great organization. There'll be some more details about this down in the description, so if you'd like to learn more, head down there to the description, check everything out down there for more details, and if you have any questions about the giveaway, feel free to reach out to me on social media at radiofacepod on all social media platforms, or simply go to... or simply email me at radiofacepod@gmail.com with any questions you have about the show or about the giveaway. Thank you again for all your support, and now let's jump into the episode. Hey there, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the podcast. My name is Daniel Trinham, and I will be your host as always. Before we get started with today's episode, I want to let you know of a few things of note. First, you may or may not be aware that I host another podcast called The Third Seat. The Third Seat is unrelated to the podcast you are listening to right now, but if you'd like to check it out, then I will put a link in the description of today's episode that you can use to listen to it. If you like this podcast, then I really think you will like The Third Seat as well, so I highly recommend you check it out. Next, I want to let you know of a few ways you can support the podcast. First, be sure to tell a friend if you enjoy the show. Word of mouth is not only a great way to help support the show, but it's also zero cost. Secondly, if you enjoyed today's episode, then be sure to leave a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. Leaving a positive review is one of the best ways of not only supporting the show, but it also gives me direct feedback from you regarding how you feel about the show overall. I greatly appreciate if you decide to take the time to support the show in any of these ways. Finally, if you'd like to follow me or the show on social media, then feel free to check out the description of today's episode. Here you will find all affiliated and mentioned links, as well as how you can support the show online. As always, I want to thank you for tuning into and supporting the show. It really means a lot to me, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode as much as I enjoyed making it for you. But first, I'd like to take a moment to thank the sponsor of today's episode, Lucky to Know You Apparel. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever loved your friend so much that you just want to squeeze them until they explode? Well, this local Chattanooga-based clothing brand wants to portray that feeling into a community that appreciates the people in their lives. Today's sponsor, Lucky to Know You Apparel, is using fashion and feelings to bring people together, making them ecstatically say, "Can you believe we happen to exist at the same time?" Check out their Instagram at Lucky to Know You Apparel and website www.luckytoknowyou.com to purchase your own apparel or gift one to a friend. Listeners of this podcast can use code FEELINLUCKY for 15% off your next order. Again, that is code FEELINLUCKY, spelled FEELINLUCKY at checkout for 15% off your next order. And hey, if no one has told you today, we are lucky to know you. All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. My name is Daniel Trinham. I will be your host for this episode as always. And I am really excited for today's episode. I have, I guess this is like a second part to a hopefully 3-part series or so with some people that I've been really excited to talk to. But my guest today is someone that I've really been looking forward to talking to. They are one of the co-owners of a business here in wonderful Chattanooga, Tennessee. I don't want to spoil too much about them, but really excited to chat with them today, hear a little bit about their story and what they have going on. So, Blaes, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I am Blaes Green, and I am one of the co-owners of the Book and Cover in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Yeah. So, and that is how I came in just to know about you and what you all do. And I probably shared this story with Emily when I first talked with her, but if I didn't, then I'll share with you as well. But I will never forget. So the first time I ever walked in there, I was with my, at the time, girlfriend, now fiance, and soon to be wife. So I'm making sure I'm keeping all the terms correct in my head. But I remember, there's a couple bookstores in town. I know there's a store on Fraser Avenue, like in North Shore, but there's not a ton of bookstores that I'm aware of, at least. And whenever I heard that you all opened, I was like, oh, I really want to go check this place out. And I remember walking in, and then I looked at, her name was Abby. I looked at Abby. I said, Abby, this is like my favorite place. I was like, I'm so excited to come back here. I was like, this is everything. I was like, this has coffee, it has pastries, it has fun people. I was like, the owners seem like really cool people. I was like, this is everything I could ever hope for in a bookstore as a visitor. Like, this is awesome. And so I remember telling myself that day, I was like, I want to sit down and have a conversation with these people someday because they just seem like awesome. So I'm excited to finally do that today.
That was our goal is to have this welcoming kind of third place. Yeah. Everybody has places that they spend all of their time, like work and at home. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's really important. We collectively think that it's really important to have third places in your community.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I remember when we went there the very first time. At the time, I wasn't reading a ton. I've definitely gotten a lot more into reading in the past year or so. But I would just, and I think I talked to Emily about this, but it seemed like you all had it segmented in different ways where, like, obviously you walk in, there's, it looks like an old sunroom kind of. Yeah. You walk in, there's that, and then there's the welcome counter where you all are at. And then there's just like the building is segmented in like these different areas. And like, it felt like, at least the first time I walked in, I was like exploring these different areas. I was like, oh, right now we're in the cookbook section. Oh, what's this new room over here going to be? Like, oh, this is the young adult section. And now we're going over here. And it was unlike anything I had seen before because where I am originally come from, there was like no bookstores other than like a Goodwill, I guess, if you want to classify that as a bookstore. And going in there for the first time, I was just really excited. So it is definitely a pleasure to have you here today, and I'm excited to chat a little bit with what you got going on. So
thanks. Yeah, there are some definite benefits and challenges with having a bookstore in a 1920s home. It's an old house.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I thought it was. It kind of looked like it, and I remember walking up to it, and I was like, if this wasn't an old house, they did a really good job of making it look like it was an old house.
It's definitely an old house, and our floors are all the original flooring, and you can see where whoever built the home, it was originally like a really small area, and then they added onto it, and they could have used it as kind of a duplex at that point. So
yeah. I think it's really cool. I think honestly, it adds a lot to it. I mean, it would be great if it wasn't an old home, but I think the fact that you can kind of tell it looks to be an old home, like, you know, there's a story behind what it used to be, but now it's been turned into something that has its own story as well. So I think it's great, and I could talk about it all day. I think it's awesome. So, but yeah, one thing I do want to ask you. So you are a owner of a bookstore. What are you currently reading at this very moment? I'm assuming you're reading something.
I am reading something. Yeah. I'm actually reading two I'm a 2-book kind of gal.
I'm as well.
I've got a nonfiction and I've got a fiction going. I'm reading an advanced copy of Homecoming by Kate Morton. Kate writes a lot of mysteries. I believe she's based in Australia. And so there's a lot of Australian history in there. She usually does multiple timelines, and so I'm enjoying that. The other book that I'm reading, I can't remember the name, it's about the invention of the lie detector test.
Really?
And it is fascinating.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that one out. That sounds interesting to me. It's funny you say that. I've been my fiance Abby's been giving me a hard time because when I've really kind of got into reading more. I didn't read a ton growing up, and I got more into it kind of towards the tail end of 2020. And at the time, I was just like I was like, okay, I'm going to read this book, and then I'll finish it, and I'll read the next book, and then I'll read that book, and then I'll go to the next one. And I would see things online. It's like, if you want to read more, you should just read more books while at the same time. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense to me. But now I'm like generally, I know I just finished a book the other day, but like now I'm like a 2 to 4 book person at the same time. And it's funny because I found that it does make me read faster, because like maybe I'll be reading book A and I'll get, I don't know, 40 pages through it, and I'm like, I think I'm done for this book right now. But I'm like, wait a minute, I can open the other ones up that I haven't really cracked open yet and see what's going on with them. And for whatever reason, I find that I just kind of fly through them a lot quicker and not that, finishing them is the goal necessarily, but I found that I go through them a lot quicker and enjoy them a lot more than I did if I'm reading a book that maybe I don't necessarily want to read it right now. I have something else I can read at the moment,
Yeah. I like to tell people that the reason that I love to read so much is that I am inherently a very nosy person. I want to know what's going on. I don't necessarily want to gossip about it, or I just like to know what's going on. I'm a snooper. I used to snoop through my grandparents' old things, and like they would find me in the attic, and I'm just a naturally curious person. So I want to know everyone's business.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm a little bit similar as well. I'm known to be an individual who, like, I'll have a random fact about something that isn't really useful for anything at the moment or doesn't really pertain to anything. But like there've been multiple times I've been at work and someone, will say something. I'll be like, oh, by the way, did you know that this thing was invented on this day back on, at this time, or actually this thing occurred on this day? And they're like, why do you know that? Or what, why, how do you know that? Yeah. It's like, I heard the one thing that I learned was, this wasn't even relative to a book, but it gets the point. I was challenged by someone to go down a rabbit hole one day on the end. I was like, I want you to just do it and see what. I was like, okay. And I discovered how, like the story about like McDonald's ice cream machines, how they're always broken. I found out like why that happens, how it happens, and like why it continues to be a thing. And so like, that's my little like fun fact. If anybody's like, yeah, tell me something about yourself. I'm like, well, I know the history of McDonald's ice cream machines, and I can tell you why they break down all the time. And if you'd like to know more, I can tell you. And they're like, what? Why do you know that?
Exactly. I'm about to be an expert in the lie detector test.
Yeah. So what have you learned about it so far?
Just that it kind of was born out of a desire to not only stop crime, but to understand why people committed the crimes that they committed. And it kind of was a sideshow, like a traveling
It was like
show.
Really?
Like this, I mean, it was
like
in,
pull up to cities.
It was in the early 1900s in San Francisco, which was just riddled with crime at the time. And there was no like big police force. It was kind of, hey, Jim next door, do you have a gun on you? There's a problem down here at the creek. Okay, so there's it's mayhem. Yeah. And so they're trying to get law enforcement going. And then you've got this guy who, he stood on science. He said it was scientific. Yeah. But what was science in the early 1900s? Yeah. And it was just really interesting that they kind of took it on the road to like show people, like you hear about traveling salesmen. It was like that, but it was them going down the road and like asking people questions and measuring how their body reacted.
See, in my head, I'm thinking of like P.T. Barnum, like the circus, like they're like pulling up into town and be like, come and, tell me, like, see if I can tell you if you're a liar or not.
Yeah. It's been really fascinating so far.
That's funny. So I literally just at the time of this recording, just yesterday finished. Did you ever read Educated by Tara Westover? So I had heard about that book many, many times, and like it's for good reason, but for whatever reason, I hadn't like actively sought it out. And one day I just randomly saw it at the thrift store, and I was like, "Oh, there's that book with the pencil on the cover." And I was like, "Okay, let me get it. For, $2 or $3. Like, why not?" And I picked it up, and I've read a couple memoirs before, but never been like, maybe I'm just reading the wrong memoirs. I don't know, but I've never been like thrilled by memoir. But like, I could not put this one down. Like, I was reading it the other day, and I had like 130 pages until I was finished, and I was like, I'm gonna finish this right now. I was I have to.
It's shocking because all cult behavior is shocking.
Yeah.
After I read Educated, I kind of fell into a cult rabbit hole with books and memoirs, and there are so many stories out there.
There are, yeah.
So many stories.
Yeah, I was just blown away, and the fact that it for one, it was just very interesting. But then, you read about she didn't step into a classroom until she was almost 18, and like now she's like an incredibly accomplished. I mean, I guess if you did the math, she's probably in her 30s now. I think she finished when at the conclusion of the book, she mentioned herself being like 28 or 27, something like that. So she's probably in her 30s, I guess. But like the amount of academic leaps she took in such a short amount of time was just astounding to me. I mean, it was crazy to me. I couldn't. Every time I would read it, I'd be like, "Am I sure this is not a fictional story?"
Right.
Like I would
She's
be
like
"Is this
risking her life to get an education?" And I'm like, man, at her age, I was just trying to go get off campus and go to Sonic. Like I just wanted a fresh strawberry slush and not to be at school.
I'm assuming she hears this, but if my fiance hears this, she's gonna really like that part. She loves Sonic. She'll like. It'll be just any random day, and she'll be like, "Can we please go to Sonic?" And I'm like, "What do you want now?" She's like, "I just really want just a strawberry vanilla water or something like that." I'm like, "What?"
There's a lot of nostalgia to Sonic. I don't know if this was how Sonic was when you were growing up, but my family, we called it Special Place, and I'm the oldest of 5 kids. Yeah. And my mom,
I'm a middle child.
Okay,
yeah.
My mom would just load up her big old expedition of all the kids. We'd pull into Sonic because they didn't have a drive-thru at the time. Mm-hmm. She would just open the trunk, and we'd put all the seats down, and we would just sit and eat all of our hot dogs and stuff.
Yeah. No, Sonic, I mean, so in my hometown, we had a Sonic for a while. It's now been converted to a coffee shop, I believe, which is kind of funny. Like you can still, the bones of Sonic are still there. So you're like, you can see what it used to be.
That's a pretty cool concept for a local coffee shop.
It's cool. Like it once it wasn't Sonic, it like kind of bounced around in a couple different businesses. And now it's like I'm glad it's a local coffee shop, but you drive up to it and you're like, that looks like it used to be something else that I recognize. But anyways, it was definitely like the spot people would go to like after a football game or something. Like everybody would pack up and either go home or they're going to the Sonic, and that's what they would do. And they get ice cream and stuff and hang out there. And it does kind of have that like old timey, I guess like 80 or I don't know whatever decade, but like, like the roller skates and like people kind of come up to you. Like it feels like an old timey little
no
restaurant.
Cell phones.
So,
I mean, we were just sitting in the back entertaining ourselves.
Yeah. No, my mom also had an expedition, so I very much resonate with your story there. So one thing I did want to ask you, and so how long now have you all been officially, at this time of the recording, have you been operating the book and cover?
I am not great at the maths, but we celebrated 1 year in November. So we opened November 4th of 21.
So you're almost coming up. I mean, not entirely, but this year will be 2 years.
I think we're on the later half.
Yeah.
We're getting closer to the 2-year mark.
So now that you're, right now where you're at, what are your just feelings and thoughts on it all? And just looking back at the last roughly a year and a half or so, what are your thoughts on where you're at now and what it's been like for you?
We have learned so much.
I got the same response from Emily.
We have just been drinking out of a fire hose since 2020.
That's one of the best like analogies I've heard.
It is. It is. The visual of us we started this out of an idea that was born on a front porch in a conversation. Mm-hmm. And it went from a conversation to a Google Doc within a week. And then it went to, wouldn't this be the perfect spot for this dream that we're just Google Docking about? Like, I mean, it's like a Pinterest board, we're just like, this would be so cool. Yeah. And maybe we've had a couple too many glasses of wine, but then it turned into a real conversation with a real potential investor who wanted to purchase the property and become our landlords. Yeah. And we were like, okay, how do we actually go forward?
Now you're like in it now.
So then at that moment, when we had somebody who was going to like walk with us on that part of it, we were like, okay, this is serious. Like, we have got to get our hands on accounting for dummies. We have got to call other booksellers that have demographics similar to us in Chattanooga. And I mean, we were just like, every week we had planned out, like, we're going to Zoom with this bookseller here. Sarah's going to, read this binder full of information cover to cover before she passes it off to us. It's just been wild. Yeah. We've settled a little bit, I think, but we're still learning new things every single day. We have a wonderful team of employees that are like, they just save us all the time because we're just entrenched in, how do we get more authors to Chattanooga, and how do we get more voices to Chattanooga, and what books do we need to have on these shelves? And then we have these wonderful booksellers who are in the shop that are getting to actually talk and interact with our customers, and that's really powerful.
Did you ever have moments like, so you have like you all where it's just a Google Doc, and like the time when you actually open the doors, do you ever have like moments in between that where you're like, are we actually about to do this? Like, or where, you were still kind of like accepting the fact that we're actually going forward with this idea. Did you ever have moments like that?
I did. I can't speak for Emily and Sarah, but I am married and a mother of 3. And I also have a job outside of this dream. Yeah. And my job is important for my family to carry on. Yeah. And so there were a couple of points where I was like, are we doing this? Yeah. Like, is my family going to like jump in with me on this? Because I could not like do any of that if they were not on board. It took up there was a whole year there. I mean, I'm a lot better and more balanced now, but there was a whole year there where I was like, I cannot do any other things besides grow this baby of a bookstore and then come home and take care of my kids, and like, there was no more brain capacity for anything else. Yeah. Yeah. And that's I've talked to a lot of different people, a lot of different personalities, but whenever I talk with anybody that is any kind of business owner in any way, whether it be small business or, large or whatever, like that is the resounding sentiment. It's like, especially in the early days, it's like, like you said, it's almost like you're raising a child, and I don't necessarily have I've never owned a business, so I'm not going to sit here and act like I know what it's like, but I can imagine, it is as involved as having a newborn. It is as needy as a newborn. There is nothing independent about that shop until it kind of gets its feet under it.
So do you feel like now, again, you're a year and a half roughly or so removed from the beginning. Do you feel now like you're at a place now where you're starting to find a better groove for just you personally as an individual and as a business owner as well? Like you're starting to kind of really own the fact that like you are the co-owner of this store? Does it still feel like you're kind of, obviously you're going to learn a lot as you go, and that's a given, but are you starting to feel more like you're accepting this role that you've found yourself in?
I think so, yeah. And we celebrated our 1 year in November. In October, I kind of hit a breaking point personally for myself, where I was like, I can no longer continue to exist the way that I have been existing. It was really, really, I wouldn't say that I was like on the verge of like needing to be like checked in anywhere, but I really was. I was exhausted all the time, and I felt like I just could not get my feet underneath me. And so in October, I made some really big like personal life changes for myself, and reprioritized, and like really laid out, where am I going to spend my time? Because that is what is most powerful in this situation. Yeah. And I've just felt like a whole new person.
Yeah, no, so I can tell you, I know our experiences are going to be very different for a lot of different reasons, but this show, I've talked about it a lot, obviously, and this is kind of my first ever, although this is not a business, this is the first thing I've ever really like created. Like, it's like I had an idea for something and I wanted to turn it into reality, and now it's a thing, and now I'm doing this, and now I'm like, oh, this is just part of my schedule now. And like, I've even talked about it a little bit on the show, like I would be lying if I said there were not days where I'm like, why did I think this was going to be a great idea? Like, I don't like, now I got to book interviews with people all the time and like think of new things to talk about and try to keep it refreshing. And there were definitely days where I was like, this is just not worth it. Like, I'm just going to, toss it and like, it'll be by the wayside after a month or two, and it'll be whatever. It'll be a fun little experience I had. And that's it. But something I've really learned is any kind of creative endeavor, whether it's something as small as this or you're starting a business, whatever, is that one, there's going to be those ups and downs. Like, that's going to be a given, and it's going to be unlike anything before, because similar to you, like with your business, like this, you have skin in the game. Like, this is your business that you have helped create. This is my show that like, it's entirely upon my shoulders to do it, and no one else is going to do it for me. And, you obviously have employees and you have your other two co-founders, but like, it's on your all shoulders to do it. So like, there's a legitimate pressure to kind of perform, but at the same time, I found it to be incredibly gratifying when things go the way, like you plan to do something and it happens the way you hope it does, or maybe it exceeds your expectations. Like, that is the best part of it for me.
Yeah.
And I'm in a similar place where there were times where I would do this and I was like, what's the purpose? Like, why am I even doing this? Why did I jump into this and decide to do this in the first place? But now I definitely feel like I'm in a much clearer position of where I want to take it and what I hope to do. And I feel the same energy. It's like, yeah, now I'm excited to do these interviews and sit down and have these conversations, because that makes it a lot easier to do, at least for me,
Yeah, I'm really, really lucky. And I don't know that many people feel the way that I feel about my business partners. We work so well together. We work so hard together. And we will talk about something and a decision that we're going to make for the shop until we have like talked it to death. Mm-hmm. Until we've decided on something that makes all of us feel really good and proud of the decision, and that it's going to benefit the shop and the community, mm-hmm. because that is our major goal, is mm-hmm. that the community, benefits from us existing. Mm-hmm. They birthed this mm-hmm. bookshop baby into the world. This bookshop is 100% community funded. Mm-hmm. And we want to make sure that we are living up to that mm-hmm. expectation.
Yeah. So on that note, you may remember this, but you may not, because I'm sure it was a very crazy and busy time for you. I remember, so like I said, for whatever reason, just the first time I ever came in there really struck me. I remember walking in, I think it was maybe opening day. If it wasn't opening day, it was like a day or two after opening day, and you all were obviously still like celebrating the opening of the shop. And I remember walking in, and it's not a huge building by any means, but like there was like people shoulder to shoulder in there, and I was like, whoa! Like, I was walking around like I'm kind of like side shuffling past people and trying to like figure out what's in here and what's in there. And do you remember anything from that time, or is it all just like a whirlwind at this point? Like,
so we opened on November 4th, and I ran the New York Marathon.
You ran a marathon?
I ran the New York City.
Okay, I'm gonna have to ask you about that here in just a second.
We opened on the 4th, which was a Thursday. I flew out at like 5 a.m. on Friday and got into New York City and got all my race stuff, mm-hmm. and I ran a marathon on Sunday. And so I missed our first full 2 days. Yeah. Like, I was there for our opening. Yeah. It was so wonderful and exciting. Mm-hmm. And then I was out of there. Mm-hmm. Like, it was a crazy, crazy busy weekend.
I can imagine, yeah.
So I don't remember the same things that other people remember of that weekend.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you told me that now, because now I have a whole other thing I wasn't even aware of. So I, at the time of this recording, actually last week, did the half marathon here in Chattanooga.
Oh, nice.
And that was my first ever, aside from a 5K I did back September of last year, first ever race I ever did.
Did you like it?
I loved it. Like,
the half marathon distance is my favorite. It's where I feel like I can like truly just like let go.
Yeah.
And a full marathon is hard on my body.
Yeah.
But I can't say no to a major mm-hmm. of a full marathon. If I have the opportunity, mm-hmm. I will just go out there and like walk it if I have to.
Yeah. Well, it's funny now, because at least at this very moment, like I'm a week removed from the half marathon, and that was the first ever real kind of involved. Like, we did training for it and prepared for it and everything. And I told my mom, like, if you had asked me a week before the race if I wanted to do a full marathon, I would have said no. You would have to pay me a lot of money to even, because I told my fiance, I was like, I'm more sick of just training all the time. Like, I'm sick of dedicating my Sundays to long runs. Like, this is just not what I'm enjoying doing. But man, I had a great time. Like that was just it's something about it. It was, I mean, the weather was fantastic, which that definitely adds to it. Like if it was like it is today, I don't know if I would have enjoyed it as much, but I get it now. Like I get what it is about people like the running community. Like I get what it is, why people are so involved in it and get so excited about it. Because I had a great time. I had so much fun, and now I'm at the point where I'm like, I kind of want to. I'm like, I kind of want to do a marathon.
Well, let me pitch a shorter distance to you because it's on Memorial Day.
Yeah.
In our neighborhood where the bookshop is at Riverview Park is the Chattanooga Chase, and it is the oldest race in Chattanooga.
I've heard about that actually. Yeah.
And it is a challenging one. There's a lot of hills, but it's so fun, and it's like a big celebration down there. The whole park is like there's vendors and it's a really fun time.
Is it like a half marathon or what is it?
I think that it's a 6K or a 10K.
Yeah.
And then there's a 1 mile option also.
Gotcha. But so you ran the New York Marathon?
Yes.
So is that a race you can just like sign up for, or do you have to like qualify for it or something like that?
I ran it as a charity slot originally. So I raised money for the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation of America. I have Crohn's disease.
Oh, okay.
And so I raised money and got a charity spot to run it. And then I'm running it next November because I got a virtual marathon spot. So I ran. This is going to sound completely unhinged.
No, I want to hear it.
Okay, so I ran it in 2021 with my charity spot. I got a virtual spot last year. So I ran it in 2022 in Chickamauga, Georgia, at the battlefield.
So you weren't like on a treadmill or something. You were like actually physically running, but it was a virtual. Okay.
Yes. So I ran that. That was really fun. I had different people come and run different portions of it with me. It was a really fun time. It was the slowest marathon I've ever done because it didn't matter. There's no cutoff.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, there's no rush.
Well, also it's a different, you think of New York, at least a marathon, like you're going to be surrounded by people, especially in New York. Like there's just, I'm imagining there's tons of buildings and like you're in Chickamauga. It's a much different experience.
Yes. So different. Like, I'm sorry, but the battlefield is not cheering for me the same way that like the Bronx is cheering for me. So I did that to get my virtual one gave me a guaranteed spot for the one coming up in November. So I'm really, really excited to run in November and not have to raise money. That was a fun experience. That was a lot of work after fundraising a bookstore.
Yeah. You've done a lot of fundraising.
Fundraising a bookstore and a marathon in the same year was not a smart idea. But
that's hilarious. Yeah, it's funny. Somebody asked me today, they were like, so you're a week removed now from the race. Like, how are you feeling? Like, are you like are you going to like do the next steps? And I was like, I'm kind of leaning towards wanting to do it.
Okay,
like,
well,
I kind of want to.
I'll just let you know that the half marathon is the gateway to the marathon. The marathon is the gateway to the Ironman.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I'm like, see, if you had asked me last year, even around the time,
it's a pipeline.
I know,
and I've done it.
That's the thing. Like if you had asked me last year, I grew up playing basketball, and so I hated running because running to me was sprinting, and I hated sprinting because
it's a punishment.
It was a punishment. You go down and you go back, and you go down and you go back, and I hated it, and I couldn't stand it. I hated the idea of running, and I never understood people that like just ran for fun because those two things were not equal in my mind. And I did a 5K, and I was like, oh, that was kind of like, it was a work sponsored event. I was like, oh, that was fun, whatever. Like we had a good time, it was relaxed and whatever. And if you'd asked me then, oh, do you want to run a half marathon? I was like, heck no, like I'm not running 13 miles. What do you think I am? And now it's like, if you ask me, oh, do you want to run a marathon? It's like, I'm kind of opening up to the idea. But at this moment, I'm like, I would never do an Ironman though. But I have a feeling like there's a small part of me. Yeah. It's like, okay, what if you did a half? And I'm like, man, I can very much see myself becoming this person, which isn't a bad thing. Like, it's not a bad thing. But it's funny how this happens. And so I'm excited to hear that now. I've been talking to people about it all week long. Like now I'm the runner guy, I guess, so I'm definitely excited, at least right now, to not have to do a long run Sundays after everything, when I could just be hanging out and, doing other things. So that's funny. I definitely would love to do one of those big runs though as well one day, like New York Marathon.
It's a different kind of excitement. I've done Chicago. Chicago is also really fun.
Yeah.
And you get to go through all of the different boroughs of Chicago, which was so fun. That was the first time I'd ever been to Chicago, and I got to see it on foot.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Were they have like the roads blocked off and stuff? That was one of my favorite parts. I felt like I was getting a security. I mean, I guess, but like I felt so special. Like we had the whole road open to ourselves, and I was like, oh, I'm an important person today. Like I get to have the whole road to myself. You know, it was just, I was having fun because normally you're confined to like a sidewalk and you're kind of like dodging poles and people and stuff.
So in New York, they close off the whole road, which is, it's a big like city block road.
Yeah.
But the crowds are so big.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
That there's a sidewalk space for you to run through. And a lot of the areas, Brooklyn is like a big party the whole day. They're out there in the streets like 10, 15 deep, lined up to cheer. They're drinking. It's so fun.
That's hilarious. The thing that got me, and I was just laughing at it the whole time because it was multiple ones. The first really big hill that we ran, it was kind of over near the art district, like behind the aquarium. We were going up that big hill. Is someone was standing at the bottom and they just had this little sign and it said, "This is not a hill," and they were just holding it up, and I was like, that just made me laugh. Like I was like, that's the sign I need in my life right now. So that's funny. That's great. I'm definitely at the point now where I'm like, I think I kind of want to do a marathon. I don't know if my knees want to do a marathon, but I kind of want to, you know. So
I think that I would try not to overtrain. That would be my only advice.
Yeah, well, that's what I've been looking at. Different,
like if you're not trying to break a record.
No, certainly not.
Just train just enough to get you to the finish line.
Well, that was my attitude with this. Like I had a time frame. I was like, I want to try to finish by this time, but like I'm not trying to qualify for anything. I was like, I'm just gonna do it to have fun. And we finished exactly when we wanted to finish. Like we were aiming for 2.5 hours. We literally crossed the finish on like 2 hours 30 minutes and 10 seconds, and it was hilarious.
We'll call it gentle marathon.
Yeah. Just squeaking in right before they close up shop. Yeah. So that's funny. It was funny. One of the guys I work with did the full marathon, and that was their first time ever doing it. And after the fact, I asked him at work the next day. I was like, "So, like, how are you feeling?" And he was like, "I'm feeling good, but I'm also definitely feeling it. Like, I'm definitely feeling it in my knees." That's great. I'm glad you mentioned that because I would not have thought to ask you about that. Something I do want to ask you about, and this is a totally different note, but it's something I see you all talk about it a lot, at least on your like social media page, and something I think we all of us in the first world know this to be true, but I don't hear it like kind of broken down a little bit. But the impact that companies, well, specifically like Amazon, companies like that, like the impact that they have on smaller independent bookstores. I know it's talked about a lot. Like obviously Amazon is known for like, normally an item is sold at $20 and you can get it for $12 on Amazon, whatever. And like they obviously serve a purpose, but like there's many, like a lot of documented evidence that like they will routinely slash down prices of something just to run other people out of business. And so I see you all talk about it a lot as well. Like when you are purchasing from, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be a bookstore, but also obviously bookstores, like when you purchase from an independent bookstore, independent whatever store, you're doing more than just buying a product and then leaving. Do you care to just kind of, from your perspective, like what is that actually like on your end of things to kind of be dealing with that dynamic? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Amazon is a really tricky problem in the book selling world. I think that you walk a fine line of making products accessible to people, and then actually, putting the money back where it's supposed to go. So in book selling, in independent book selling, we're buying a product from the publisher, directly from the publisher, and we are not allowed to change the price that's printed on the book.
Yeah.
That is the price of the book. If you go on Amazon, they're selling the book for less.
Yeah, usually not that.
They're selling the book for less than what they paid for it, wholesale. So how can anyone beat that? Like they're selling it for less than what they paid for to just sell it.
Yeah.
Like they're not making money off of that sale.
Yeah.
In the digital world of Amazon, that's a whole nother space. In the publishing world of Amazon, that's a whole nother conversation. I just think that there are other choices for people who want to look for other choices, that there are other choices than Amazon.
Yeah.
It's
So one on that note, and obviously, like, I'm privileged in the fact that I can physically go to your all's bookstore and pick out a book and purchase it if I want to. Something I wasn't aware of, and I think I talked with Emily about this a little bit. I'm forgetting the name off the top of my head, but there's some kind of website that, like, for instance, if someone wanted to buy book A from you all, but you all did not physically have it, or maybe you did, but they couldn't come to the store to physically walk in and get it. There's some website that, like, partners with bookstores and you can buy them on. Do you know what I'm talking about?
It's bookshop.org.
That's what I'm thinking of, yeah.
It partners with indie bookstores all over the country. I think that they're actually expanding into the UK and maybe another country.
Yeah.
But they give back the proceeds of the purchases to the bookshops. They do that by actually giving you a percentage of the sale that you've just made. And then at the end of the year, they've got a pot of money that they take and they distribute that back into the indie bookstores.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it's a really, really, really cool symbiotic relationship between bookshop.org and indie bookstores, because we're promoting their platform where you can go order a book for a price that's very comparable to Amazon's. And they're giving money back into these community shops.
Yeah. Well, I think that's like, and that's part of, I wasn't aware of that until I'd spoken with Emily about it the first time, I think. And I think I'm making an assumption here, but I think that might be kind of like the hiccup for a lot of people is like, oh, I'd love to support this business, but like, I can't go to it. Like, if someone doesn't live in Chattanooga, it's like, I can't, drive across the country or fly over there just to go pick up a book and then go back home. But that provides a much better alternative, at least in my eyes, because then it's like, oh, well, it's the same process. Like, you're just going online and selecting the book and checking it out, and it'll show up at your doorstep in however many days,
And I think that if you think about Amazon too long, that you can really bury yourself in feeling like you can't succeed, because we can't compete with Amazon.
Yeah.
We're not competing with Amazon.
No, that's not the point. No.
We're not. And so Emily and Sarah and I have to remind ourselves a lot that the customers that we have are coming to the shop partially because of the atmosphere that we've created. Yeah. Like, you can come into our shop and you don't have to buy anything. Come, please, and sit at our table and set up and hang out and experience this place. Like, that is something that you're not going to get at Amazon. So we're not competing with them.
Yeah, no. And I think something definitely, like, you all have that definitely, obviously compared to Amazon, but also a lot of other places is, depending on the day, obviously things will change, but like, you all are there. Like, it's not like you all created this business and you were like, all right, cool.
See you later.
We'll be here on Mondays and that's it. And we'll be, like, you all are there. You're there, like, reshelving the books, or you're there checking someone out, or like whatever it is that you do around the shop. Like, you all are there. I've only been there one time I can think of where I didn't see anybody, and that was because it was one around lunchtime, and I was only there for like 5 minutes. Like, I literally came in and I knew what I wanted, and I grabbed it and go, and like it was just one of the other employees was there at the front desk. But like, you all are there.
Like, I was there yesterday 3 different times for a significant amount of time, and I was like, by the time I came back the 3rd time, I was like, why have I gone back and forth? Like, why haven't I just sat here?
Yeah. And I think that, at least to me, like, that resonates with people, because I know I want to, like, whenever I can, like, I want to support businesses that I like, and especially if they're local. Like, I know that stimulates the local economy, and it helps, other people that I know in my community to live their lives in a good way. But it's not like you're just a faceless name or something like that built this business, and now you've just kind of booked it off to, wherever. Like, you're there physically showing face and interacting with the community, when you can, which I think that's really cool. I think it's a great thing.
I think it's really cool that the 3 of us feel as excited, as relaxed, as just, pleased as punch with this place as anyone else that walks in. Like, I will walk in. When I leave here, I'm going to go take care of the plants. And just being in this space for like 15 minutes is enough to just reset me.
Yeah. Do whenever you walk in, sometimes do you ever forget that you're like the owner of the place, or are you just like, oh, this place is like, does that make sense? Like,
Sarah and Emily and I will text each other a lot and be like, Can you believe it? Can you believe it?
You're waiting for Ashton.
Like,
Is it Ashton Kutcher that was in Pranked?
Yeah.
Like, you're waiting for him to like jump out and be like, gotcha.
One of us will be like, oh no, did you see that email? Remember, we are in charge.
Yeah. That's funny. But yeah, I mean, I think that you all have that strength about, at least specifically with you, and I think that's a big deal with independent businesses, is the fact that you all are physically there. Like, I can go there and be like, oh, this is not only a bookstore, but like I see the people that are making it happen. Like, I'm interacting with them face to face, like right now.
I think it's really cool to have access to your booksellers, because they're the ones that are making the choices on what's going on the shelves, and they want to know what you want to see on those shelves, because they're as much yours as they are ours. Yeah. We want to make sure that people come in the store and they feel represented when they're, they feel represented on the shelves, that you see a book on our shelf that resonates with you. Yeah. And if you don't, we need to know.
And speaking of books that resonate with people, so I've come to realize, I spoke with Emily about this. Whenever I first kind of really got into reading, I had this attitude. I was like, for one, I felt like I could only read one book at a time, but I was very, very much into nonfictions for whatever reason. I was like, I have to read nonfictions. Like, fictions are for children.
This is serious literature.
I was like, I'm an adult. I have to read about these things, and if I don't like it, then whatever. I was like, whatever. And it was funny what kind of got me out of that. Like, no shade to nonfictions. If you're listening and read nonfictions, then do that. But one of my it's a guy I go to church with back in my hometown. He wrote a book, and I was like, oh, I'll read it. Like, it's his book. I'll read it. And it was like basically a young adult, like, fiction book. And I loved it. It was great. I was like, why am I not reading more books like this? Like, this is so much more fun than reading about whatever I was reading before that. And so I have found, for me personally, I love like historical fiction thrillers. For whatever reason, those are like my, like, if I read one of those, I'm like, I know I'm not gonna be able to put it down. Like, that's like the thing I've discovered about myself. Do you have like a genre or an artist or a kind of book that, like, that if you're gonna open this one, like, it's gonna be one you're gonna be flipping through, you just can't put it down?
I am known as our emotional reader. I like a book that is a little bit devastating. Okay. Emotionally devastating, that has a really strongly built character that you can fall in love with, who can then be ripped away from you.
So were you...
So like a contemporary fiction, but I need there to be some serious trauma in it.
Yeah. Okay. So this is gonna, I'm still relatively new to like the books. Like, I'm not like that super well known, but like this is going to show my like very norminess about me. But were you like a big Fault in Our Stars fan? Like, was that like your bread and butter? Or
no.
Was it? Okay.
It was not.
I wasn't sure.
I am.
That's like the first thing that comes to my mind when I think of like someone, spoiler alert for a book that's been out for however many years now. Sorry. But.
Or like A Walk to Remember. Yeah. No, I love romance. I love romance for totally different reasons than why I read like general fiction. Yeah. I would say like A Little Life is a book that was like a touchstone for me as far as like emotional reads. That book was wonderful. I also like a thriller that's a little bit.
Do you like Thriller, the song, also?
It's fine. No, but like thrillers are really fun. Yeah. I really will read absolutely anything, though. Really? Yes, it does. It doesn't matter. I like fantasy. I like romance. I just devour books.
So speaking of things, so you said you will read anything. I did have something I want to ask you, and I think I asked Emily this, and I think I did, but I want to ask you: do you have any like hot takes, like, I will not read this book though, or like, I read this book, everybody loves it and I cannot stand it? Or do you have like a book that's like a classic but you just don't understand it, or anything like that? Does that make sense?
There are some authors that I struggle to understand more than others, but I don't hold grudges against a book. Yeah. Like, I'm really hard. I use an app called Storygraph to track my reading. And Storygraph is kind of the alternative to Goodreads. Goodreads is owned by Amazon. Oh, I didn't know that. So Storygraph is independently owned, operated. It was started by a Black woman. And it's a really great alternative. Yeah. It gives you some really good data about your reading.
I'll have to check that out. I didn't know about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I always overrank something. Yeah. Like, I'm gonna lean in more to the 4 and 5 stars. Even if I really don't like something, then it's going to get 3.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just not going to give anything 1 or 2 stars because somebody spent maybe years creating this thing, and maybe I read it at the wrong time, or maybe I read it at the wrong, like I just didn't get it, you know, and maybe I need to come back to it. So I'm just not going to hold a grudge on it.
No, I'm the same way. Like, I realized I recently finished a book by, you know Michael Lewis? Yeah. So I recently finished one of his books, and like, I've read books by him before, and it was what was it? It was Liar's Poker. Have you ever read Liar's Poker? So it's one of his older. I think he wrote it like in the 90s, and I found it at a thrift store, and I was like, oh, I like Michael Lewis. I'll read it. And like, I came away from it. I didn't love it. Like, I didn't hate it either. And I just kind of read it, and I was like, okay, that was good. And I read it, and I was like, 4.5 out of 5 stars. And I was like, I just don't want to be that person that's like, oh, this book is like. Well, also, I don't
know if you've experienced this, but we do book clubs at the bookshop. Right now we have 10 different offerings for the month of March. Yeah. And sometimes I will not rank something until after I've gotten to talk about it. Yeah. Because sitting around and talking to other readers about a book that you didn't like, and being able to maybe say like, I didn't like it because of this, or I didn't like when this happened and that threw me off, and to get somebody else's take on it. Yeah. And then you can be like, huh. Yeah. I see that. Yeah, like that could change my whole perspective on a book. Oh, yeah. And that's why I feel like indie bookstores are so important, because there's not very many spaces in the world where you can be standing and browsing a shelf and overhear a conversation next to you, and somebody's recommending a book that you've read before, and you are invited into that conversation. Yeah. Like, that's so cool.
Yeah. No, I agree. I definitely agree. It's funny you say what you were saying about like hearing somebody else's perspective on a book, and it kind of changes yours. So I recently had a kind of a similar experience. So last year at some point, I came into a used copy of Crime and Punishment, and I was like, I wanted to read it at some point because I was like, I've heard about this book, and it's a big old Russian book, and I'm like, I'm just going to read it and see what happens, you know. And
that was my Anna Karenina. Okay.
So what is it? What is? I'm sorry, I don't know what that means.
It's also Tolstoy, and Anna Karenina is like this big honking book. Really? So your Crime and Punishment is my Anna Karenina, where I was like, this is a challenge, and I accept it.
Well, that was my thing. Like, I even told my fiance, I was like, my New Year's resolution, I know I will do this, is to finish this book. And I was like, it's not going to take me the whole year to do this, but I'm going to do it. I was like, I'm going to make it seem like it's a much bigger. So anyways, and I was like, this is the, like, people talk about this all the time. And I read it and I finished it, and I finished it and I was like, so what do I, like, this is like a classic. Like, this is like this is like his book. Like, people do courses on this book. And I was just kind of like, it's okay. And I was like, what do I do now? So I was like, okay, maybe I need to like see what other people think about it.
See what they're saying on Reddit.
Yeah, that's what I was like. I was like, what do I need to, I don't know what to think about this. Like, there's so much going on. And I was reading, there was one person that was like, this book was really good, but I had a hard time getting past the names. And I was like, I resonate with that person because I could not keep track of the names a lot of times. But then this was the other person that like just loved it. And they're like, this is the greatest book I've ever read. It's my favorite book. I read it every year in March on the, like on this day, like it's my favorite thing to do. I love it because of this. And I was like, oh, okay. Like I didn't see, I was not privy to what you just explained to me because of this book now. And it kind of made me appreciate it a little bit more, to whereas if I didn't hear that person's perspective, I would have just kind of been like, okay, well, this was a kind of weird, interesting Russian book. Interesting. Yeah. I have another one of his books that I picked up that I don't know what it's going to be like, but I just saw his name and I was like, oh, it's not I think it's The Idiot, I think. Have you read that one yet? I haven't read it. It's some book by him, and I don't know. It's called The Idiot. I don't know what it's about, but I was like, oh, there's his name. I'll read it and see what happens. But yeah, I've found out about myself that I'm a sucker for any kind of like historical fiction, like anything involved. Like I've been flying through Dan Brown books, and I've come to learn that like some people love Dan Brown, some people hate him.
I just devoured those in the 90s. Yeah. I was a Dan Brown girl.
Well, I've known about his books for a while, but like I never really read it, and I read Da Vinci Code a while back, and I like read it in like 3 days. I was like, what just happened? Like, why did I just read this book so fast? And so then I was like, oh, there's like 4 other ones in this series. And so I found Origin somewhere. I used copy. I was like, I'm going to read that. And I flew through it, and I was like, this is like, what is it about these books? And I told my fiance, I think it's something about the fact that he'll be like, oh yeah, we're in this place seeing this art piece. And I'm like, I don't know what that is, but I got to see right now. And I'll like look it up and be like, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen, you know?
There's something so fun about a series too.
Yes. Yeah.
My oldest child is 10, and she started reading. She picked out a book we were there Friday. We ate pizza at the shop.
Nice.
And
was it Pizzeria Cortile?
It was Pizzeria Cortile. So and then we walked over to the playground at Riverview Park. So it was a perfect way to spend a Friday evening. But my oldest picked out a book, and took it home, loved it. She started reading it, started asking me questions in the car. I love when a book does that for my kids. It's a little bit older for her, and so they're using a lot of slang terms. And she's like, what does this mean? And I'm like, this is so fun for me. I'm getting to explain pop culture to my kid.
Yeah.
But she finished that first book last night at like 7:40.
Yeah.
The shop closes at 8. Which doesn't matter because I can get in anyway. Yeah. But I told her, I was like, the shop closes at 8 and we're not going to make...
And you got to get out.
I'm like, we're at
You were sweeping her out of there.
No, at that point, we're at our house.
Yeah.
So it's 7:45 and we're at our house. And she was like, can we please go get the second book? And I was like, we could go in the morning. Like, we're not open on Sundays, but we could go in the morning.
Yeah, well, you can get in. Yeah.
But I was like, I know that feeling of finishing the first book and not having the second one queued up and ready to go.
Yeah.
So we went back, and it was like 7:55 when we walked in. I was like, I'm wearing my slippers. Like, we are just here to make sure.
You're hoping nobody sees you, because if they do, they'll be like, oh, they're open.
Yeah. So we got that, but then she went ahead and put the third one on hold because I told her, I was like, we're not pre-buying the series. Like, you've got to earn the next step here.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, that's fair. So that's fair.
That has been really, really cool to share with my kids.
Yeah.
Is just excitement around books.
Yeah. No, I'm starting to sense that. Like, I get that now. You know, it's funny. I feel like I need to like make a public apology because like growing up, I was definitely like I didn't read. My favorite books growing up were Diary of a Wimpy Kid books. Still love them to this day.
Listen,
they're fantastic.
My daughter was we call them reluctant readers.
Yeah.
So I have a really enthusiastic middle child who is a voracious reader, and he cannot get enough. But my oldest has always been a reluctant reader, and I think that what I've learned is that you keep offering.
Yeah.
You keep offering different types of books, and you keep offering, give them a graphic novel. Yeah. And then if they really love the topic of that graphic novel, they might want to read a book on the same topic that's maybe not in that format. Yeah. And so far, that has worked really well for me.
Yeah. Well, no, that is 100% me. I was the kind of kid like in school that'd be like, okay, we're going to read this book. I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to go play sports. And that was just me. Like, that was my personality. And I remember there were specific people in my mind that like, they would just eat up like the books that were really like Hunger Games series. I was really popular on this, like the Harry Potter series, like all those books. And I would never say anything. Like, I wasn't mean to him or anything. I'm not trying to paint myself but in my head, I'd be like, what are these people doing? I'm like, how are they just
can
like,
they sit there?
Yeah. I'm like, what is wrong with these people? I'm like, just what are you doing? And like, now I get it. Like, I may not have the same interest as them, but like, I get it now. Like, I need to like, I feel like I need to walk up to him and be like, I'm sorry for like silently judging you in my head, being like, why are you reading this? Like, I get it now,
I think that we're just in general pretty hard on ourselves as people, that there are a lot of expectations out there, and that reading and just in general, that there's really high expectations around reading, what you should be reading, when you should be reading, and how much you should be reading. And I personally have gone through like spells of my life where I just couldn't read, which was not like me at all. But there were so many things that were going on that needed to be attended to, and that I had like dry spells where I didn't read. And then I'd find a jumping off point, a book that felt more accessible that I could like just, dive into. And that would spring me back into reading a lot again. But I think that if we're really honest with ourselves, that there's a lot of room for grace when it comes to reading. Like, especially when it comes to what you're reading.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of judgment out there about what you're reading.
Yeah, and I think part of that is because like reading as an institution is like the oldest form of entertainment we have. So like, you know, when there's, for instance, like we were just talking about Crime and Punishment, like if I just like hated it and I was like, this is the dumbest book ever, like there's gonna be people that are like, are you kidding me? Like this is like the book. This is like the first book. Like this is it. Like you can't just say that about this book. But like,
so as a nerdy girl, one of my favorite like scrolling activities on my phone is to go to these like classic books and read the reviews. Because if you go on Storygraph and you go on Goodreads, these are not scholars.
Yeah, no, they're just people.
They are just people reading in their apartments.
Yeah,
like that is a lot. A lot of these books are heavy texts that need some like guidance to decipher.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
And so the reviews are hilarious.
Yeah. No, I was getting the same way because, like, you know, after I finished Crime and Punishment, like, I enjoyed it, but I was kind of like, I think I'm good if I don't have to read that ever again, you know? But I was doing the same thing. I was like, I have to see what other people, because there's like 100 million reviews of that book. So, like, you can find tons of reviews. And there was so many people that were just like, didn't understand it, wouldn't recommend it, 1 star. And there was other people like, this is the pinnacle of human existence. Like, this is it. And it's just so funny seeing the dichotomy of
it's really
people.
Funny and interesting to see what resonates with different readers.
Yeah.
I have 2 English degrees. And so I've read a lot of, and written a lot of papers about, and just done a lot of critical thinking about literature and what that looks like. I would never walk into our bookshop and go straight to the classics. There are only like 2 that I would reread.
Can I ask you what those are?
Sure. East of Eden by John Steinbeck.
I've heard of that one, yes.
I've read that one 3 times. Yeah. And that one is just such a beautiful story. And the way that the symbolism in that story is just so well done. The first time I read it though, I slogged through it. And I was like, what am I doing with my life? And I got to the end and I was like, oh my God, that was the best thing I've ever read. The other one is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho.
Okay, so you don't have to go too far into it, but my fiance recently finished that and she loved it. Like she was like, you need to read it. And
it's
I haven't read it.
Life-changing.
Yeah, well, I haven't read it yet. And every time like I'll see it and I'll be like, what is in this book that like people are going, you can talk about as much as you want to.
I'll tell you what I would tell you if you were standing in the store and I was selling you the book.
Okay, sell me the book. Sell me this pen.
It is a story. You're going to follow this young boy on this journey. And it is so poignant. I mean, the book is tiny.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It'll take you you'd finish it on a long Sunday.
Yeah.
But it's just about like life choices, and it's so good.
Yeah.
It is one that when I need a reset for like how I'm thinking about things, or if I'm feeling like things are just rushing by me, that is a book that I can read in a really short amount of time that kind of like puts it back in perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned, I'm definitely going to read it because like I said, my fiance has it and she talks about it all the time, and it's not a long book at all. Like I'll look at it and be like, I could probably read this like right now, or like have it finished tomorrow.
I gave it to all of my bridesmaids.
Oh, nice.
On my wedding day. Like that was the gift that I gave them. I was like, this book, everyone needs a copy of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it. Speaking of life choices, so we're coming up on the hour mark, and I just want to first off say thank you very much for being here and just chatting with me.
Yeah, this has been so fun.
Yeah, this has been great. I've just been really looking forward to this, and I'm glad I've been able to so far make good on the promise I made to myself to sit down with the owners of the Book and Cover. Because, like I said, I remember, I don't know if I told Amy this or not, but if I didn't, she'll hear this. But like I said, I remember walking in there and I was like, these people seem so cool. I want to talk with them one day, and now I'm getting to do it. So that's cool for me. But speaking of life choices, the way I like to end each of these episodes is with a little segment. It's different than everything we talked about, but a little segment called 15 Quick Questions. So you're going to have to make some quick choices here, if you don't mind. It's going to be A or B questions, so this or that, hot or cold, if that makes sense. And I just want to get your answers off the top of your head. So
sure. It's an Enneagram 5 nightmare.
Well, this should be fun then. Okay, so you ready to go?
Sure.
All right, this is 15 Quick Questions with Blaes. First off, do you pronounce it caramel or caramel?
Caramel.
Yes, I agree. Do you prefer hot coffee or iced coffee? You can sub tea if you prefer tea. Or if you just don't like either of those, maybe
No,
just
I
like
love
hot water.
coffee.
Yeah.
I love coffee, and it just depends on the season.
Yeah. What are you feeling? If you had some right now, if I were to walk in hot or cold, which one would you choose? I'm generally I'm a hot in the middle of summer kind of guy. Like I don't know something about that.
I generally run pretty cold, and so usually I need something to warm me up.
Yeah. I'm the opposite. I'm generally like very hot, and I'm like I need a steaming hot beverage to go with the fact that I'm sweating right now. Anyways, do you prefer summer, fall, winter, or spring?
I actually really love the winter.
I'm the same. I'm the same way. I love the fall and winter times.
I love all of the seasons. I'm very, by the time the next season's about to roll around, I'm glad for it.
Yes.
I like when the seasons change. But in the winter, something about the winter allows me to hibernate the way that I want to all year round.
Yeah.
And I love it.
I'm the same
I
way.
like to run in the winter. It invigorates me.
You're speaking to me right now.
But I'm a fire personality.
Yes.
And so I am going to be burning at all times. And I think that there's really something there psychologically about the winter cools me down, and I am living my best life in the winter.
No, I'm the same way. I
don't like to be cold.
See, but that is one thing. I do. I prefer it to be cold because then I can warm up.
I'm a bundler.
See,
yeah,
you are speaking my language right now. This makes me. There is so much winter slander in the world, and I'm so glad I have someone that understands.
I know, and that people are like, it's so gray, and I'm like, it's not always gray though.
And even if it is, like, listen, I understand. There's nothing like a great 85-degree summer day. The breeze is blowing. Like I get it. I love summer too. But also, if it's like cold and snowy outside, it's gloomy and gray, and it's a Saturday, and you can just
hike,
or just sit on the couch. Just like that. Just give me a sweatshirt, a fire, and a cup of coffee, and you won't hear one complaint from me. I'll be happy and I'll be good, and
Yep, same.
Sorry, I'm going on a but like I had every time people were like, "Oh, what do you prefer?" I'm like, "I love the fall and winter." They're like, "What do you mean?"
I think that if you would have asked me 5 years ago, I would have told you like summer, because who doesn't love the summer? Summer's really fun.
Always been a winter person.
The adult version of me very much loves the winter.
I'm really glad I'm finally somebody speaking my language, because every time I tell people, they're like, "Oh, okay, well, we prefer the spring and summer, but whatever." I'm like, okay. Anyways, next question: sweet or savory food?
Savory. I want something spicy, and so spicy that it makes me like cry.
Really? Nice. We have so much in common. I'm loving this. Okay. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no? No. Oh, really? Okay. See, this is where we divert now. No. We've struck a chord with each other.
Immediate no. I do not like warm pineapple on my pizza. My mom also makes this like warm pineapple casserole that has cheese in it.
I've never had.
I
might need this recipe.
Yeah, I will get it. I'm going to get it for you, because the people who love warm pineapple love this casserole.
I just love pineapple. I literally will go. I put pineapple. I eat it like every day. I love pineapple. It's like my favorite thing. But like I'm a big fan of it and on pizza. So definitely send me that recipe. I want to try it out. Okay, sunrise or sunset?
Rise.
I agree. Guacamole or salsa?
Salsa. Hardcover
or paperback? The ultimate question.
God, I'm a hardback girl.
I'm the same way. I'm also.
I like to get the book right when it comes out.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a hardback.
I am also. It makes me feel very like esteemed. I'm like, oh, I have the hardcover. Like it doesn't fit my backpack, but I have a hardcover. Like.
Because I am always reading multiple things at the same time, I do like to have a paperback with me, because it's much more easy to transport around.
Yeah, I've noticed the one downside that I've found of hardcovers, like if you're traveling anywhere, it's just not as convenient. But I'm like, at the same time, like there's nothing like cracking open a hardcover. So anyways, crunchy peanut butter or smooth peanut butter?
Smooth. Really,
I'm a crunchy fan. I love both of them, but I'm always been a crunchy fan.
Hold on. Let me turn you on to this. Okay. On my way over here, I ate a smooth peanut butter with banana on a seed bread. So like one of those like really seedy grainy breads that you can get at the store. Yeah. And it was
like an Elvis sandwich?
It was like a last meal level good, because it had the texture to it.
That's a good point. I didn't think about that.
It didn't have peanut texture. It had
Okay.
the seed texture.
I may have to think about that because I do like
It'd be
seed.
a great post-run snack for you.
I will try that and let you know. All right. Next big book person question: fiction or nonfiction?
Oh, for sure, fiction.
Okay.
I have to force myself to read nonfiction. Last year, I actually had to
Really?
challenge myself to finish a nonfiction book
Really?
because I just hadn't read any.
Yeah.
Which is not the first thing I reach for.
I usually try to keep like I try to, just for whatever balance sake in my mind, like I'd one or the other at the same time. But I'm definitely leaning more towards fiction as well at this point.
Yeah, and I think that's part of that for me is I have a hard time remembering that not all nonfiction is self-help. Like
Yes.
that I can read things that I'm interested in, like the lie detector.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, final 4 questions here. Who in your mind do you think would be a better chef, Martha Stewart or Snoop Dogg?
Oh, Snoop Dogg.
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you seen? I'm sure you've seen his cookbook, From Crook to Cook.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I don't own that, but I think it's hilarious. All right. Which decades do you prefer? 70s, 80s, or 90s?
50s.
The 50s.
I was born in the 80s, but most of my memories are in the 90s.
Yeah.
And so that's where all of my nostalgia lives.
Yeah.
So 90s.
Gotcha. All right. Of the kind of final holidays of the year, which do you prefer? Christmas, Thanksgiving, Halloween, and New Year's?
I really love Halloween.
Really?
Yeah.
I
We always
I'm growing
do a
to
little
appreciate
Halloween
Halloween more.
party
Yeah.
and trick or treat.
Yeah.
And there's no gift giving.
Yeah.
So that's like a low expectation. So yeah, Halloween.
My fiance also loves Halloween. She got to dress up as a witch for the first time this past Halloween. She loved it. So
Yeah.
she had a great time. I'm growing to appreciate Halloween more as I get older. So I'm definitely with you on that. And finally, the last question, I ask everybody this. I usually try to change up the first few ones, but I always ask everybody this. I want to hear your rationale. If you had to, would you rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or 1 horse-sized duck? And I'll let you think on it for just a moment because this is a lot of things to think about.
100 horse-sized.
No, so 100 ducks, so a bunch of tiny horses, 100 tiny horses, the size of a duck. Yes, 100 of them. So think of looking around the room, thinking
Whole room.
Yeah.
Filled with a lot of tiny horses. Okay.
Or one really big duck, the size of a horse.
I'm gonna go with mini.
Okay, so what's your line of thinking here?
That I am faster than I am strong. And
You're gonna outrun them?
I'm gonna throw so I'm gonna get some good hits in.
Okay.
And then I'm gonna retreat. And then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna do it again. I don't think that I would have the same success with the large thing.
Yeah.
Because I don't have that strength.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's my rationale.
I like it. I love.
That's kind of my rationale for all, like, if I ever feel like threatened, I'm like, I am real scrappy.
Yeah.
And so I'm scrappy and I'm fast. So I can at least get a couple of good hits in
Yeah.
before I need to run. And I know when I need to run. It's that oldest child thing.
That's funny. Yeah, I love asking people that because everybody's like, I can see the wheels turning. They're like, well, if I did it this way, maybe if I did that. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, that's 15 quick questions. Thank you for playing along there. Before we finish up, obviously, you all have the store, and I'll make sure to put links for socials and things like that. Is there any other links or anything that people listening should be aware of or anything about you or the store or anything you'd like to mention before we finish up?
We are going to be celebrating our annual ink drink.
Yes.
That will be on April 29th.
And I was at the first one of those, which was a lot of fun. So
Really fun. Yes. It's going to be a little bit different this year. Last year was our first year, and we are going to change up how we schedule the programming.
Yeah.
We did something every single hour.
You did. Yes,
last
I remember
year,
that.
and it was exhausting.
Yes.
So fun. Such a wonderful celebration.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to try to make it a little bit more accessible time-wise so that more people can do more things at the shop that day. So there will be an adult book fair. We're working on some authors. And the evening, there will be a VIP party that'll be a ticketed event.
Oh.
So that will be really fun as well.
That's exciting. Yeah. That is awesome. Yeah, I like I said, I actually went to that event. I think I came by early in the morning. I had something going on that day, and I came by because it seemed like a lot of fun. But yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll make sure if there's any links or anything like that, I'll put that down in the description. So if you're listening and you want to check them out, definitely do online. If you are in the Chattanooga or surrounding Chattanooga areas and you're looking for a fun place to go, get some coffee or a pastry or a book, or just to look around and have a good time, I will highly suggest checking them out at something Hanover Street. I'm blanking on
1310 Hanover.
1310. I live kind of over in that area, so I know it's I live on Tremont Street. So I know if I follow that street, it gets to Hanover, but I don't know what the number is. So, well, cool. Well, yeah, definitely check them out. It's a great place. I think they do great work. And yeah, I'm just excited for what you all have going on, and think you all are doing great work. So thank you again for coming in today. I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.
It's been so fun.
Yeah, this has been great. To everyone listening out there, thank you as always for tuning in, listening to the conversation. Hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I will catch you all on another episode of the podcast. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the podcast. As one final reminder, if you'd like to support the show, then don't forget to rate and review the show wherever you get your podcast, or share it with a friend. If you'd like to check out any links that were mentioned during the show, or follow the show or myself on social media, then feel free to head to the description of today's episode to find these links. As always, thank you again for checking out today's episode, and I really hope you enjoyed it. I will catch you all on the next episode of the podcast. See ya!